see why we should
Hello,
have to have
YouTube.
all three of us here.
Hello, YouTube. Welcome to another edition of the Talk Show for Talkers here on irishtalkers.com. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Cork. I hope it's the same in your part of the world. And we're almost ready to start recording, which is quite extraordinary. We're not usually so good at being on time. I'm ready. Ted, are you ready?
I'm ready, Moira.
Paul, are you ready?
Oh, yes.
Good show. Let's kick off then. Yeah, just get Audacity ready to go. Okay, Ted?
Yes, Moira?
Now remember, Ted,
Yeah?
so is a forbidden word
Okay.
and is a forbidden word.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends. You're very welcome to the Talk Show for Talkers on irishtalkers.com. Our email address is info@irishtalkers.com. You can also find us on Facebook as the Talk Show for Talkers. We always look forward to your suggestions, your questions, your comments, your feedback. In fact, your feedback is our evaluation. You help us to improve and to put on the show what you want to hear from us. You can also listen to previous shows on our website, irishtalkers.com. And we also publish the Public Speaking Weekly. This is a fantastic read for those of you who are Toastmasters or even would-be Toastmasters. It's all from the internet. It's about Toastmasters, obviously. It's about confidence. It's about leadership. It's about competency, how to run speechcrafts. Everything you want to know about Toastmasters is on, if not this week's version, on some week's version. So look back at your saved copies. My name is Ted Malamphy, and I'm joined again this week by the prolific, passionate, persuasive Paul O'Malley.
Listeners, it's lovely to be here with you again, and I look forward to listening with you to whatever Ted Malamphy has to say on today's episode.
Well, what we usually have to say is more or less the same every week. We follow not the same every week, but we follow the same format every week. It's an eclectic mix of thoughts from Paul and from me. And we usually have guests that would come on. And sometimes if we don't have a guest, we would certainly have a video or a YouTube offering from some notable person on the planet for you to listen to. So today we will be doing that. We will be listening to Simon Sinek in an interview with another very well-known gentleman. And I'm not going to tell you any more about that until we come to the second episode, which will be tomorrow. So I'm just going to whet your appetite now and tell you you'll have to be here for that. I will have a word of the week. I won't actually. Paul will have the word of the week. I'll have a thought for the week. And I'm going to give you that thought for, and our director Moira is laughing at me there, and rightly so too, Moira. I'm tripping over myself today, listeners, tripping over myself. My thought for the week is, don't count the days. Make the days count. So don't count the days. Make the days count. What do you think of that, Paul?
Huge numbers of people in Ireland have been counting the days, both backwards and forwards. Usually people count the days until their wedding, count the days until they go on holidays. So don't count the days until you go on holidays. Make the days before you go on holidays count. Well, clever. But I think it's a good idea for you to make today count. On the other hand, I find sometimes, Ted, that I need some practice to keep up my skills at counting. So I've often found that it's useful to count backwards from 100 as quickly as I can, or to count forward from 1, 2, and 3 and see how quickly I can count from 1 to 3 and backwards. So I think I've already counted 2 uses of the word so in the podcast by me. And I think it is quite good to count your so's. So there it is. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to make those so's count, Ted.
Well done, Paul, because I thought you were counting my souls, because Moira was smiling at me, and the challenge she has laid down before me, not just for today, for every week, was for me to cut out that 2-letter word which links other words and thoughts, but I find it difficult. It comes out of my mouth. When it comes out, I start smiling, knowing that I'm just after another misdemeanor
I
in my school teacher's lexicon. Moira, my teacher.
My mother brought me up to so. I have a strong disagreement with Toastmasters about the use of the word so. I found it a very useful skill to be able to sew and to darn as a young fellow in Limerick. I used to sew. Well, when I couldn't think of the synonym for darn, I used to say I used to sew the holes in my socks. The word sew has a lot of usefulness. I think it's what you would call a hominin, although I would give way to somebody who says it's another word which I can barely pronounce. So, Ted, that's where we are today.
Paul, you're after making a similar mistake to what I made. Usually, I'm not sure how good you are at maths, but the so you're talking about, with regards darning, has 3 letters in it. And there's another so if you weren't into the darning, you might be into the gardening when you'd be sowing the seeds. Well, you're sowing the wrong seeds today, sir, because the sow we are referring to is SO, not SEW or SOW, but SO.
Now, you do remind me of getting petrol in the car when I was young. We used to fill up with SO. So you definitely, that's a very key thing there. And I think that it's a little unfair of Toastmasters to give the word so, the sound so, let's call it that, the sound so, such a bad reputation. There is a place for so. And so long, Marianne. I mean, nobody has criticized Leonard Cohen for the first 3 words of that song. So long, Marianne. I don't know, you can sing the rest of it, Ted.
That's a beautiful song, Paul. My advice to you is stick to the day job, but
Oh,
and
Ted.
listeners, you might have picked up a little bit of information there when Paul was speaking about when he used to go to the garage, they used to fill up with SO. Well, today's show is sponsored by Texaco, in actual fact. So I hope we won't have the multinationals up in arms over Paul's faux pas that time. We're sorry to the Texaconians.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Look, this is turning into something in which we're going to have to issue erratas, which is Ted did not really mean that this show is being sponsored. This show is only sponsored by District 71 in Region 10 of Toastmasters International, to whom we extend our grateful appreciation. Now, moving on in the joyful mood that this episode has started off with, Ted, I want to tell you that I was present, listeners, at a session on speechcraft that Ted Melanphy led yesterday. And when it finished, I was exultant. In fact, I was more than exultant. I was jubilant. Exultant is the word of this week as a consequence. When did the word exultant enter the English language? Ted probably brought it in just before he started the Speechcraft program. And I won't ask you, Ted, because it's unfair, really. And as you know, I have the correct answer. And it wasn't in 1654, and it wasn't in 1652. I leave you guess, which one was it?
1652.
I said it wasn't in 1652. It wasn't in 1652, and it wasn't in 1654. When was it?
1656.
Oh, very good, Ted. Very good. That's not bad guess for a beginner like yourself. All right, listeners. I can tell you it was 1653, right? And the word,
between the two of them.
oh, don't worry about that, Ted. It's just, that's what happens to you in golf too. You didn't get it. The two sides of the whole. So basically the synonyms, exultant, it's EXULTANT, exultant, meaning jubilant, meaning full of joy. Absolutely. Now, you could actually say, when you're evaluating somebody's speech in your club, all through that speech, I was exultant, joyous at the richness and variety of the words and the diversity of the movement of the speaker on stage. You can use words like exultant. It's a million times better than saying, I really like the way in which you did this, Ted. There we are, something to practice there. Let me tell you that if you want to, you need a synonym for it, a word that means the same thing. You can say, I'm cock-a-hoop. Cock-a-hoop this week, Liverpool beat Man U. I'm pride. I'm full of pride. Triumphant. Now there it is. You've made a triumphant start to your Toastmasters career. That icebreaker had me exultant at the energy and commitment with which you've joined this club. We are joyous at your arrival. That's, of course, what a good evaluator would say when a new person does their icebreaker. I expect this happens in every club. I just have a bad memory. I haven't heard people using the word triumphant when they're giving feedback, but I don't go to all the clubs. Maybe listeners, it's what you use. But anyway, there's a word for you, exultant. There is also a noun called, exultant. There's also a verb called to exult, and there's also an adverb called exultantly. So there we are. Ted, we have a word for the week.
Exultant. It's not too an extravagant word to use with regards a person's icebreaker, is it?
The thing is that one of the hardest things that one of the hardest forms of speech for people to use is exaggeration. And yet it's one of the most powerful things. All of the people who give lessons on how to speak well advise that you exaggerate. You exaggerate your gestures on a stage so that everybody can see them, and also especially on Zoom, and that you use exaggerated language in order to beef up the richness. The idea of understated language only goes down in very subtle places and only in one country in the world, as far as I can tell.
And that's a beautiful way to finish our first segment of this week's offering of the Talk Show for Talkers. We'll see you again tomorrow when we will have Simon Sinek speaking or being interviewed or interviewing even a very special guest. So come back tomorrow for that offering, and we hope you'll enjoy it. Sorry, Mar, I had too many shows in there altogether.
I wasn't.
Oh, I think I beat you, Ted. I think I beat
actually-
you that time.
I wasn't actually listening for them. But
I was. Actually, I can't get out of full screen here, whatever way I'm after opening this now. I was trying to click out of it so that I could get look at what Paul was going to be doing in segment 3. I couldn't get out of it. Every time I clicked, it just clicked back into full screen. Obviously, I have 2 screens open or something.
don't know, Ted. I'd need to be at your computer, I think, to be
Yeah,
able
no,
to
it's
sort that
okay.
one.
I'll figure it out after. I don't want to leave while
Yeah,
actually.
just compress that.
If I leave and come back in, I might lose everybody.
Well, you probably would, yeah.
Have a warning, Ted, on the Blarney Club website to advise people that when they're coming to club meetings, they should be sure that they don't nip over to kiss the Blarney Stone for the second time.
It's good advice. It's good advice. But I think Blarney, the people who organise the Blarney Stone and who allow people in, I think there's an advisory there to tell you. But it's not just for the kissing of the Blarney Stone that people go in there. The grounds are absolutely magnificent. They've got a fantastic head garden around there, and some of the different gardens that he has throughout the estate are absolutely inspiring. Beautiful place to go for a walk now, for instance, during this pandemic, once you stay within your 5 kms.
Right. Well, very good. I
Beautiful.
wonder, do you think Moira O'Brien will ever come back, or will we just be left chatting to each
Oh,
other
I'm
about
waiting
the
for
Well,
you,
Blarney
Ted.
I've
Stone?
seen Mara over the last couple of weeks, and I think she's flirting around with intergalactic stars.
I'm
She's
waiting for
becoming a
you
star up
folks
there
to
herself.
finish chatting so we can get on and start the
Oh,
next
yeah, right,
segment.
Mara. Yeah, because I might get a phone call to visit my doctor.
Okay. Right. Are you ready then, Ted, to introduce Simon Sinek?
I am.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello again, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends. I promised you yesterday we had a special offering for you today. It's our friend Simon Sinek, and he's interviewing or being interviewed by, notice he's doing the interviewing, Darren Brown. Darren Brown is a stand-up comedian, but he could have taken, he was on the road to taking up a degree in psychology and psychiatry. So what he has to say is very relevant. So enjoy this talk by Simon Sinek and Darren Brown.
Okay.
Do you want to give an outro now, Maura? What?
Yes, we do.
And will I
seconds.
add in this time that next week you can listen to the second part of the show?
No, we're playing the whole thing in one go, Ted. We're breaking
22
our own
minutes.
rules. We're breaking our own rules. We're allowed to. We
Oh,
make
that's
the rules.
okay. I don't mind. So is that? So what section is Paul coming back for after? So
Section 2.
section 3.
Sorry, section 3. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and so we're going to go over the hour today. So
Yeah.
okay.
Who makes the rules, Ted?
Yeah. So as a matter of interest, are we going to listen to it now, or have you both listened to it
No,
already?
it's 20 minutes long. 22 minutes long, Ted. We're not going to.
Okay, that's fair
so
enough.
no comments on it. Just
Yeah.
outro.
Paul, will you give me what you're doing again? I read it earlier, but I'm after forgetting what it is, and I can't get out of it. Oh, hold on a while. Hold on a
Do
while.
what? Sorry.
I can look at something here. Oh yeah, I have it here now.
Do what? Sorry, Ted.
I just wanted to look at what Paul is going to be talking about. Team working on a club committee, right? A recommendation. So
Okay.
you can call. Do you want me to give a sign out on Simon Sinek?
A sign out on Simon Sinek and a preview. You know,
Of what Paul is going to say.
right,
Okay.
Yeah. iPad connected to the network. Thank you. Right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, Toastmasters. I hope you enjoyed that episode by Simon Sinek and Darren Brown. Did you listen to it in its entirety? Because if you did, you would have noticed that we gave you a double helping of that, because that went on for over 22 minutes. I hope we didn't keep you from some important work. We would love you to come back again tomorrow, where you will be listening to the personable, passionate Paul O'Mahony. And Paul, as usual, has something very important to speak about. It's team working on a club committee, and this is a recommendation. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Okay, Ted. Just a second or two. Let's tidy up.
Oh, couldn't you? Were you able to download it, Mara? You were?
No, I had to record it live.
All right, sugar.
I was doing other things whilst it was recording, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
There was no route to download, unfortunately. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Right. On to segment 3. Ready to introduce Paul, Ted?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends. You're very welcome to segment 3 of this week's offering of the talk show for talkers. And I'm not going to talk too much about the person who's going to be giving this talk, because it's the personable, passionate Paul O'Mahony. And Paul is going to give you what I promised you yesterday. Paul is going to be speaking about teamwork on a club committee, a recommendation. Over to you, Paul.
You do know, don't you, that when you joined Toastmasters for the very first time, you promised that you would bring guests to your club meetings. You do remember that, don't you? Great. And you also know that all the other members of the club have promised to bring guests to club meetings. So the concept of shared responsibility for the size of the club, the growth of the club, the vigor and energy in the club, the shared responsibility of revitalizing the club from time to time. It's a joint activity. You know that already. I was talking recently to a highly placed member in one of the districts in Toastmasters International. I was talking to them about, well, what is the responsibility of the vice president for membership? And during the conversation, this very highly placed person, very much more experienced than myself, said, Paul, every member in the club is responsible for membership. I said, yeah, that's a very good point there. I would say everybody would agree with that. Would you agree with that, Ted, for example?
Almost definitely, yeah. Every
Great.
member is an ambassador for the club.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really good. Yeah. Let us take a look at the Club Leadership Handbook. This is the Toastmasters International description of what each member of a club committee is responsible for. What you will find in the Club Leadership Handbook is that one person, and only one person, is the leader in relation to getting new members to join the club. The vice president for membership is the leader in relation to the recruitment of new members. Nobody else is the leader. So what does that do for our club, which moves along, saying to everybody that we're all responsible for membership? If the advice that's given in the Club Leadership Handbook is that it is the vice president for membership who leads the effort, who is responsible for galvanizing the individual members of the club to do their bit, for advising the individual members of the club how best to assist in the work of converting new members. I come out of a business background. And in business, when you are on a board of directors, it doesn't help if everybody thinks they're head of IT, if everybody thinks they're the director of finance, if everybody thinks they're the director of operations. It simply doesn't work. Somebody has to be the leader in relation to a critical function. So who's responsible for the recruitment of members into a Toastmasters club? Very simple. The vice president for membership and their team. They can have subcommittees. They certainly have a big interest in getting every single member of the club to assist, but they're accountable. So at the end of the year, if, for example, the club doesn't recruit any new members, who's held accountable? Let's look at it in terms of the finance side of it then. What is the treasurer responsible for? Besides keeping the money safely and not absconding to Alicante or somewhere like that with the money, providing receipts for money provided, what is the vice president for finance the leader on? Well, they're not the leader on membership, we know that, and they're not the leader on PR. But I tell you what they are the leader on. They're the leader on making sure that all of the existing members renew. They're responsible for communicating to members in the club that they owe money. And in a very nice way, if you don't pay up, you're no longer going to be a member in the club. In a very nice way. But they're seriously, their skill is with the communication to all of the members on the club's behalf that now is the time. And we're getting close to the end of renewals. When is the end of the renewals period? And when did it begin? The person in your club who knows the answer to that is and should be the first port of call, the Vice President for Finance, otherwise known as the Treasurer. You see, the Treasurer then knows what to do and knows that that's their number one responsibility. And if members are not aware that they haven't renewed, if they haven't paid their money, even though they want to renew, Treasurer's responsibility. We could look at all of the existing functions, and I won't. Here's my recommendation. And I promised a recommendation today, Ted. My recommendation is that clubs change the way in which they do the teamwork, and that they switch to a model which has proven to work in every business I've ever come across, that each member of the club committee is responsible for something. And that this idea that everyone is responsible for everything is discarded into the dustbin of history, so that the PR person knows that it's their job to attract people to the club. It's not their job to get them to become members. It's their job to attract them into the club so that the vice president for membership can convert them, and so that they can send their money to the treasurer. And this will clarify things. Now, of course, each of the people in charge of a function on the committee, they have a big interest in getting the members to help them out, don't they? You can't be a PR person without getting help from the other club members. You can't do it by yourself. Apart from anything else, word of mouth is the easiest way to recruit new members. So the vice president for public relations, it's their job to encourage the members to use their mouth to recruit new members. Isn't that right? It's not just their job to put things out there on Facebook and on the radio, word of mouth. They're responsible for, from time to time, making a little speech to members in the club about the value of word of mouth. I hope your vice president for public relations has done that already this year, but there's loads of time. It should be done very soon. The importance of word of mouth. If a club goes through the entire year without having a speech about the importance of word of mouth in order to get people to come to the club, what effect does that have? Well, it tells ordinary members that word of mouth isn't really that important because nobody has actually made a little speech about it. And then some people are better at word of mouth than others. So when the head of public relations makes a little speech about word of mouth, they're going to give examples of best practice, aren't they? So they're going to be able to praise people in the club. Look, there's Ted Melanfi. Do you know what he did? He didn't just get on the phone. No, he eyeballed them at his business-to-business meeting last week. And in word of mouth, over a cup of coffee, he got them all to come to a speechcraft. That is word of mouth in action, isn't it, Ted? You need to unmute yourself, I think, in order to be heard, but maybe it's me. Anyway, my key point is to argue in favor of stopping one thing, which is muddled responsibilities, and moving to a model where there is clarity. And I've got one tip for a club president. What's your role? Well, of course, you're there to represent the club. So you have to look like you're a model of respect, integrity, excellence, and service. You've got to stand for that. And you stand for the mission of the club. But it's your job to keep all the other members of the committee accountable. Accountable. So it's your job to help any vice president at all if they're not doing their job well. It's your job to have a word with them, arrange mentoring for them, coaching for them, arrange to buddy them up with somebody who is good at that job in another club. But Your job is to hold them all accountable. That's a simpler way of doing it than simply saying you're there to chair the meetings. What do you think, Ted? Am I too radical?
No, you're not, Paul. You've come up with some fantastic ideas. And I must admit, Paul, that I've been working on the side while you were giving us that lovely information that you're giving us. But you're not too radical at all. You're not radical at all. You're still persuasive, personable, and passionate.
Well, I tell you what, I really would love to hear what the practice in real clubs out there. I've only belonged to one club in which those things are done in a very clearly differentiated way in the way I'm advocating. But I really would like to hear from the other clubs, wouldn't you?
Well, certainly there are many ways. You know, every club, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, but every club has its own character and has got its own culture. So lots of clubs do things completely differently, even though we're all doing the same thing. And some
And
clubs are better at some aspects of it, and vice versa.
And the other thing is, it's really good for a club to do a bit of an audit of its own culture and say, could we be smarter? Could we be better? Listeners, let me leave you with this message. Do an audit on how well your club does things, and do that in the coming week.
Marvelous exercise, yeah. Well done, Paul. And that leaves us with a lovely finish up to segment 3 of this week's episode of the Talk Show for Talkers with the personable, passionate Paul O'Malley. Sorry, Paul, what I was doing there, actually, I was trying to look for something because I'm sure I'm supposed to be doing segment 4.
I knew what you were up to.
Did you
As
look at
soon
the
as
chat,
you said,
Ted?
as soon as you were,
Look at the chat.
I looked at it, Mara.
I said
I didn't.
I
I
responded
didn't
to
look
you.
at it.
What, Mara?
I responded to you.
Oh, you did?
Before the 3 minutes.
Oh, very good. Yeah, well done, Mara. Okay, that's excellent. We'll do that. So, Paul, will we have a conversation on the topic that you brought up there, actually, with regards doing an evaluation on your club Speechcraft?
Oh, I think a discussion about
Sorry,
speech.
not Speechcraft. What about Moments of Truth?
Well, look. Let's say.
Or do you want to have a chat on
Let's
Speechcraft?
say no. Let's say it's your choice. I'm dealer's choice. You have led on Moments of Truth in the club, and I've given you a bit of feedback, passed on a bit of feedback from a previous district director.
You did.
From the other side of the Atlantic on how you did it.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, you're a world leader on Speechcraft.
I don't.
Do you know how many other people, Ted, have run Speechcraft using the new digital version of Speechcraft?
Nobody in District 71, anyhow.
I'm talking about you being a world leader. Do you know how many have done it already?
Well, you know, has Kajetan Barreto done it? He certainly has a video up there of what it's like. Not sure if he is. Maybe I am one. Maybe I'm a world leader.
Would you be surprised if I told you that you were the #1 in the whole world?
Jeez, I'd be delighted. That's great.
Well, I won't go that far. Okay. But if I told you you were in the top 5, would you believe me?
You just knocked me off the golden fish up on top of Shandon there.
Look, Toastmasters are humble, Ted.
Thanks,
we're
Paul.
humble. We're reserved about. But I really do think that you are right up there in the vanguard. And that's why I think that the recordings, which are and will be made of the sessions, are so valuable to keep for history, because in 10 years' time, they will be gold dust for people in Cork who have been on that. to look at and to say, my goodness, what was the first digital speechcraft like? Do you remember that guy, Ted Melanfi? He was in the club for a very long time. Now he's in Spain playing golf. But he used to be a regular member.
Paul, that's very interesting, and more both because both of you are pivotal personages on that speechcraft program that we're running. But I got a lovely email from Elizabeth last evening. She says you're after opening a can of worms, and the can of worms, it's a nice can of worms. They're the edible type of worms that she had out of the can, I think. But what she was saying, and I hope Elizabeth is listening to me now whilst I say this, she said you're after opening a can of worms because people are getting onto her now looking for the recording of it. After we said yesterday morning, you actually have to be at the show, and if you want to record, if you want a recording, you have to record yourself. But Malcolm, what's his name? Cameron McKegney, is it, or Cameron from Scotland? He's a fantastic speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on tour about it, and he wanted to know when the next one was. So he knows notice next week. So we're growing the population of people who want to come along and look, which is great. I think
Good.
we went up every week from the first week to the second week to the third week. We were up to 31 yesterday.
Yeah, well, as I
Ted,
said to you in the general evaluation yesterday, Ted, I am bowled over by how much interest you've managed to get in the district.
Yeah,
And
and
outside
I
of it.
think, Mara, that's something I must say to you. I thought your general evaluation yesterday was superb, particularly since I was putting pressure on you to wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up. I had to say the same to Paul. I'm going to have a look at the agenda, and I'm going to create my own agenda,
Yes, that agenda
because the
is
one that
awful,
they
Ted.
give us is hard. It's hard to get it down to the times that we need.
That agenda is terrible, Ted. It's
It is,
unreadable.
yeah, I agree with you. The timing in it and everything is.
Yeah.
So we'll create our own. I'll have a new one next week.
Yeah.
see,
But
the thing is,
what I was delighted with
yeah.
yesterday, some of the stuff in the chat and the private messages I got from everybody who was at, everybody thought it was great. So I am blown away by it, to be honest. And you get the energy
Ted,
from the people on the
there's
show,
one.
you know.
I think it's entirely possible that next week there'll be 60 people there. I think that's entirely possible, right? And I think
I
it's
wouldn't. No, I'd be happy enough
and
if there was 33. We don't.
well, no, but in the sense that, as you say, the word of mouth is going around the place. Now, I think it's wonderful, the scarcity factor, that you don't get the recording. You have to come and see it.
Yeah, that's what I said to Elizabeth too. Yeah, so if she's sending on emails to anybody about it, they'll understand that.
But it was,
GDPR.
you know, I think the whole thing. Now, look, hang on a second. We've got a fourth episode, and we have to decide, and you have to decide what the topic's going to be. And if you decide it's about speechcraft, well, we better not say any more now. We better
I think we
record
should
it.
Yeah, we should speak about speechcraft, so the digital version of it.
Okay, Ted, I'm whenever you're ready, or I'll
you can bring me in,
you.
so yeah, and you can.
I'll introduce
Did we
you,
give an outro to you, Paul? Did we, Mara?
Do you want me to contribute to this, Ted, or
yes,
shall I hide myself again?
Yeah.
Okay.
As you say, Ted, did we do an outro to the last segment?
Mara, did we do an
outro?
outro?
Did
we?
No. So you can do that now.
Okay, I'll just do that. So.
Yep. Hold on.
When you're ready, so.
Key it up. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
And that was very interesting. Paul gave us plenty of food for thought there. So, Toastmasters, I hope you've taken note of what the personable Paul O'Mahony was advising, and it was a recommendation that he was giving. So, act on the recommendation, turn the recommendation into an action point. And we'll see you tomorrow, where we will be discussing, and we have a guest coming tomorrow to discuss with us, speechcraft.
I love that twist, Ted. I love that twist. You're damn good on your feet. You know that. I've always said that about you.
Right. Paul, you can bring us in this time here now, so. And you can introduce the guest, Ms. Moira O'Brien.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that.
Be with you in a second. Just tidying it up. Okay. Section 4. Okay, Paul. Go away. That's it. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, listeners. Thank you very much for being here because we have a very special show today on the Talk Show for Talkers. And it is of particular relevance to all of you who are keen to grow the size of your club and the size of Toastmasters International, because Speechcraft, the new version of Speechcraft, which has recently hit the streets, is being run maybe for the first time in Europe by Ted Melanfi. And today's special guest is a person who played a major role yesterday, I think it was. Yes, yesterday, or perhaps
More than yesterday. The first 3 segments of the show.
is the person who played a major role at Speechcraft as the general evaluator. And that, I'm delighted to say, is our great friend, Moira O'Brien. Let me first of all, though, hand over to Ted Melanfi, who will fill a few basic things in, and then we'll have a discussion about the new Speechcraft.
Well, thank you, Paul, for that glowing introduction. And I'm delighted you mentioned our great friend, excuse me, Maura O'Brien, because Maura is more than a great friend. She's the person who manages to put us out on air every week, because she's the brains behind the Talk Show for Talkers. And Paul, what I would like to say is that I had been organising, or trying to organise, a Speechcraft programme for 5 people whom I had identified, who I know would benefit from the programme. Since before Christmas, I was organising the Speechcraft, but the one I was inspired by was the one that Crystal Long put on, and that's how this actually came about. Because whilst I was printing all the different aspects of the Speechcraft and the different segments that come into it every week over a 6-week period, Crystal had sent me all the information. I was devouring forests trying to make paper, to get enough paper to produce what she sent on to me. And just as I nearly had, I hadn't quite finished the printing, but I was very close to finishing the printing. And several cartridges of black and colour ink. Lots of forests were turned into deserts. And here I was ready to launch, and somebody said to me, "Do you know there's a new version of Speechcraft out?" I said, "I heard something about it, but God only knows when that will come about." They said, "No, it's actually out." Well, I said, "I'm ready to launch mine now." And next I was told, I think it was Daniel Sanders, sent on an email to me to say that the new digital version has been launched in District 71 from the 1st of February this year. I had mine organised to go. The advice on the package or the bundle that I purchased was you should give yourself a 2-month lead-in period to do all the organising and to get all your ducks in a row. I was ready to go on the 10th of February with my 5 speech crafters. Then I was calling them non-Toastmasters. Now they have the exotic title of speech crafters. So I went ahead and launched and we are all learning together. And it's not Ted Malamphy, it's Blarney Toastmasters are the sponsors of the Speechcraft. It costs $50. To work with it as a platform is superb. It's a lot easier than working in pathways. And this is one of the things that our listeners may not be aware of. But my five speechcrafters, or our five speechcrafters, as non Toastmasters, they now have access to pathways. So all the learning, all the education that they need, such as how to do your icebreaker, how to accept the evaluation that's given on the icebreaker and organize the speech a little bit better the next week. They've got all that training. So when we're finished after our 6 weeks, they will already have 3 projects completed, and they can get credit for that in a club if they decide to join. And I think that's wonderful. And from the point of view of clubs out there who want to attract new members, consider putting on the Speechcraft program. Invite people in. If you wish, you can charge them to cover the costs, but whatever you charge can then be discounted from their membership fee, which I think is superb. So in actual fact, if you were to charge them $90 to join the Speechcraft program, that would also allow them to become members of Toastmasters because they've already paid it. If they decide not to pay the 90, or if they decide to pay the $90 and not join the club, well then it's revenue for the club. And we are not, we are a non-profit organization, so anything that goes into the club is used in the club to enhance the club, to make the member experience even better again. We don't need a lot of money to run Toastmasters clubs, but you certainly need some money, particularly, as you know, when we're out there person to person, because we have to rent rooms, we have to buy equipment.
Ted, let me cut across you. Ted,
Yeah, by all means, Paul. Yeah.
Look, tell me, where did you get 5 people from the general public to decide that they were willing to do speechcrafting in Blarney Club? Where did you get them?
Well, I was very fortunate here, Paul, in that I'm a member of a business networking group. And we have 22 members in that business networking group. And one of our objectives at the start of this year, at the start of January, was we were going to do a SWOT analysis on each person's business, which is what we did. But what was decided was we'd set up different pods rather than have the 23 people in the one pod. So I was in a pod with 5 other people, and we meet on Friday mornings, but for this particular exercise we were meeting on Wednesdays. So when the opportunity was given to us that we have 6 people in our group, that's when I decided at Christmas time I'll ask the 5 other people, would they like to take part in a speechcraft, and explained what speechcraft was. And they've been listening to me on many occasions speaking about Toastmasters, and they appreciate what Toastmasters has done for me as a communicator. And 5 of them, without hesitation, put their hands up. Yes, we are going to do this, and they're reaping the benefit now.
Yeah. And tell me, Ted, what was the clincher as far as they were concerned, in your opinion? I mean, that you could have given them 10 reasons to go on Speechcraft, but was there one clinch reason above all others that it made it appeal to them?
There certainly was. It's not just me in that business networking group who is a member of Toastmasters. There are 2 or 3 other people in that group who are also a member of Toastmasters. And one of those members, Robert Stevens, and he's part of the Speechcraft team because he's one of the guides, and the guide is the person who works with the Speechcrafter. So each Speechcrafter has a guide or a mentor. And Rob joined Toastmasters after he joined this B2B, and members of this networking group remarked on how eloquent and how articulately Rob Stevens presents what he wants to present at our meetings every Friday morning. So he made a huge impression on the members of B2B and on other people as well. He's a fantastic Toastmaster and he's a fantastic networker. So
And
that's
one more.
because Rob wasn't in my pod, but the people in my pod recognised what Toastmasters has done for Rob and what Rob is doing for Toastmasters.
One last question to you before we go over to Moira. Ted, you're a very experienced Toastmaster, and you've been in positions of responsibility. So you are a leader already. So it's not like as if you're a shrinking violet unable to persuade anybody to do anything. But tell me, how difficult has it been for you to get the collaborators you've needed in order to run the Speechcraft program?
I had absolutely no difficulty whatsoever. The 5 people who are in as the speech crafters, I knew that they would do a fantastic job. I identified 5 other people that I wanted to mentor those 5, and the 5 I asked all jumped at the idea. So I've been extremely lucky from that point of view. It's not that I identified people, I identified people who had the competence, because
Very good.
there are many people who are competent, but these 5 to 10 people not alone have their competency, but they also have character, and
But
that's a fantastic ingredient.
tell me, Ted, is anyone else in District 71 in any way interested in what you've been doing?
Oh, of course. So I mean, we've got magnificent backing from the district leadership team, from the district director down, Gerard Mannix, Sultan Kuss, who is the chair of the Speechcraft committee. She's the brains behind Speechcraft in District 71. Elizabeth Jordan, Brenda Lannon, everybody on the DLT team, Paul, are behind this 100%. And you will have witnessed yourself on Wednesday morning that our district director was one of our guests and spoke very eloquently, and was very much impressed by the visitors and the guests that we had along. And not alone have we guests from District 71, we also have guests coming in from District 91, which I think is marvellous.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if the Americans will be in next week, because I'm sure the news is crossing the Atlantic. It's just that you start at 11 o'clock in the morning, which is 6 o'clock on the East Coast. So even though there are lots of committed Americans and Canadians, and even people from South America, I think it's probably stretching it for them to make it into your Speechcraft
I
next
know,
week.
Paul, you're a very important member of that team of the Speechcraft, along with Moira, but you might be stretching it a little bit there now, sir. I'd like to ask Moira, actually. Moira, you were the general evaluator on Wednesday. How did you feel about doing a general evaluation, particularly since there were people there who were non Toastmasters, and we hope that they might aspire to become Toastmasters?
To be honest with you, Ted, it was a challenge. I wasn't quite sure at what level to pitch the general evaluation. And in the end, I just played it by ear. I stuck my finger in the air and said, "Okay, let's look for the good things." And the first good thing, the number one good thing, was how encouraging the whole organization and the whole team who had come into support. And I use that word very, very deliberately, the word support. There were 31 people in that meeting. There only needed to be 7. The 3 speechcrafters, the 3 mentors, and yourself. Well, no more.
Well, five
Sorry,
speechcraft,
I
five
beg your
mentors.
pardon. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself because one had to leave early and one couldn't be there.
Yes.
So there were only three. But okay, so 10, 11 people. So 31, we had an extra 20 people. And that was, I think, extraordinary. It's not something that I was expecting. And the fact that they were all there, I think, would have given, on the one hand, possibly overawed in certain circumstances. But I think our speech crafters, because they're all business people, they're quite well aware of the world and being out in public. So it didn't overawe them. So quite the reverse, I think it would have given them huge encouragement. So that was my main thrust of the general evaluation. Now, I'm afraid we are running out of time, Ted. So we've gone on.
Could we,
quite long.
Moira?
So,
Since this is so, important and so world breaking, is there any chance you'd stay on for a couple of more minutes so that we could record a few more things about it? Or, is that asking too much? Would that be in any way possible?
It would be possible. I have to just pop out for a second, so forgive me. I have a tradesman looking at my leaky roof, but I will be back. Carry on without me just for a second.
Could I carry on talking to Ted about it?
Please do.
Yeah. Ted, by the way, just in relation to the point that Moira said most recently, I shared her concern about the number of people who were there to observe what was going on. So what I did is, in the chat privately, I sent a message to one of the speech crafters and I said, well, lovely to see you again. Great to see you. I hope you've had a good week. By the way, is it okay if all these people watch what's going on? And the reply that came back was, great, absolutely relaxed about it. So all of my, I only spoke to one of them about this. Maybe I spoke to two of them about it, but it proved to them, I think, that what was happening was really important. Now, not just because it was really important to them, but it actually made a difference to a whole lot of other people who were there.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Paul. And I'd like to add to that, because being the person who was down as the coordinator, I had a responsibility, and it's one that I was very aware of, that I wanted to make sure that these 5 people who were coming on board with me for the speechcraft understood what was happening, and I wanted to keep it low key. And I got on to Elizabeth and I got on to Sultan Kus, and I was making the point, I want to keep this low key. I don't want anybody to be feeling that they're like a goldfish, But what's after happening is that the people who are coming in as guests are fantastic speakers and fantastic people to answer table topics. So it's all been thrown into the pot and is coming out as this magnificent stew. And people, even my speech crafters, I can see them growing. And the only one of the reasons that they're growing is that they're getting these people making points and giving them feedback as well, by the way of in the chat. And they absolutely are thriving on it from the point of view of they can see the benefits of what's happening. And that is the case for me as well. And I must say that when Mara said there that what she said first, something about I listened with an ear, I thought she was talking about EAR, but she was speaking about putting her finger in the air, which is AIR. I thought that was interesting, lovely little play on words. And I hope when she comes back, I'll repeat that to her or tell her about it. So,
Well,
Paul, you had a fantastic role. Well, you made it into a fantastic role your contribution on Wednesday, where you had the opportunity to interview the guides and the speech crafters. I thought you handled that very well. What did you think about that? How did you feel about it?
Well, what you asked me to do, Ted, was to lead a review by the speech crafters and their guides of how things were going. This was, I think, the third meeting in the program.
That's right. Mhm.
And just what I did was ask one of them. I started with one of them. It may have been a speech crafter. I can't quite remember for sure. And I asked them leading questions about how they got on during the week and what their guide had done, which they had found helpful.
Mm.
So they said something about that, which was positive and great. And I called on people to give applause for that. Then I went to the mentor or the guide and I said, what was going through your head during the last week when you were preparing yourself to work with the speech crafter? Now, none of them had been primed for these questions.
No, that's
So it
true.
was real table topic type thing. I put you on the spot in front of 30 people and I say, what went through your head last week when you were planning to work with this person? So they gave a response. And then I said, look, put all of your hands together and applaud the two of them. Bang. And repeated that process so that all of those people had been involved. The most of it was about looking back on the previous week. But when I got to the final pair, I asked the guide, as you think ahead into the following week, what are you going to do differently from what you've done in the last 2 weeks? And that was a deliberate moving the orientation towards the future, which is where, of course, it must be. So, I mean, I love doing that sort of thing. You know me, I love drawing out of people what they are thinking about and what they're planning and how they feel about what they did. And I have to say, look, you gave me 10 minutes and then you said to me, look, Paul, maybe you can do it in 8 minutes. Well, I did it in 10 minutes and 17 seconds. I timed it afterwards. So, because I asked the timer, you see, we had a timer all the way through. And Michael Kett, who was the timer, I was able to send him a private message in the chat saying, Michael, how long did I take? I'm sure I went over the time. Well, I did go over the time that you had urged me to do it in, but I wasn't beating myself up because I didn't go 12, 13 minutes with it. But the tricky part, if we ever do that again, Ted, is the speech crafters want to speak. They actually want to speak.
Oh, I
And you
agree,
have,
Paul. I agree.
and
Yes.
And
you don't, it's,
if you had asked me after, Paul, before you asked the timer, how long did Paul take, I would have said maximum 5 minutes.
well, I tell you something, not only does the speech crafter want to reflect and speak about the experience, so does the guide. And when you're in my position as the facilitator, there's a risk that you might be rude. I mean, you could say to the speech crafter, okay, John, that's enough from you
Yes,
now.
good point.
And, and I hold my hand up at times in my long career. I have done that,
Are
not
you
being
saying
proud of
career?
it,
Are you changing
not,
career for life?
not being proud of it. But the key thing is that actually, in reality, thinking ahead to next week, if you were good enough to ask me to do it next week, we better have a little discussion beforehand about how on earth can it be kept to 10 minutes. I mean, without being too,
Yes.
dictatorial, because it's pretty tricky if you ask an open question and you say, how did you get on working together in the last week? If I was to say to them, how many minutes did you, no, yeah, did you spend more than 5 minutes together last week? Oh, yes, good, thank you. Did you do it on telephone? Oh,
I
yes,
know,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
I know what you
And
mean.
you know what I mean?
I do.
So,
Have you ever been, if you were watching any of the talk shows on television, or indeed any of the interviews over the radio, one of the most irritating things for both the guests and the interviewer, in my opinion, is when they ask a question and then they hurry the person on to answer the question without probably answering it the way it deserved to be answered, because they have to be strict about their time. Now we have to be strict about our time too, but I take your point. We'll have to make sure we have adequate time to do that interview. That's a very important part of the Speechcraft program.
well, if it is, and I bow to your experience, I thought the way in which you explained the program, what its purpose was, all of those contributions, which you did without notes. You spoke because you've internalized that program, and because I've never seen your heart so much in anything in all the years I've known you. You were stupendous, absolutely
Thank you very much.
stupendous,
Thank you very much.
and but the thing is, okay, are we going to get any members? Let's take a very pessimistic scenario. Let's assume that none of them join. What are they going to go back and say to your business to business networking group about the value of it?
Well, I have no doubt that they'll be effusive in their congratulations with regards what it has done for them, irrespective of whether they join Toastmasters or not. And
And
this is the thing about that business group, that there are 22 of us there, so I have only 17 more people to work with now to get them all into Toastmasters.
well, look, as the head of membership in Blarney, I'm over the moon, of course, because I will have to say, guys, look, stop praising me for the growth in our club membership. Don't be giving me all the praise. It was really Ted, but it'll still, I know. But in
I
all
know it is a
seriousness,
team effort. It's a
but
team
the
effort.
other thing is, you see, that Speechcraft, there are three things for which Speechcraft is good, in my opinion. One, it's good for recruiting new members, straightforward. Two, it's good for public relations, because every single one of those have networks of their own, and you can be certain that they are going to be spreading so that's public relations. And thirdly, it's education for every person who attended in a watching mode.
Oh yes, of course.
I think that every single one of us who was really anything, a small bit player, and some who never opened their mouth throughout the whole process because they weren't there to speak, I reckon it was one of the most educational experiences we've ever had in Toastmasters. Because what, right from the beginning, why should you structure a speech? We got a speech, a keynote speech from Sharon O'Neill, member of Online Orators, about the most important thing when you're planning a speech is why you're doing it.
Incredible.
That
Superb.
piece of speech was as powerful as I've seen at any Toastmasters conference.
I'll have to agree with you. And what I was very impressed with also was the evaluator and the evaluation that Danny Banks gave that particular speech.
Well, you see, that thing about giving the speech crafters an example of a speech,
Yes, inspiring.
and having it evaluated by an experienced evaluator. Now, I'm sitting there in the audience and I'm saying to myself, will these speech crafters be carrying out evaluations? Well, I know for sure that they will. I don't know when they'll be doing it.
Next week, Paul. So
Right.
we're
But
giving you forewarning now,
they've,
yeah.
I mean, it's a bit like, a good golfer and a good coach going out to give a demonstration about how coaching can take place.
Yes.
So you give the professional golfer an opportunity to hit a few shots and they're brilliant, but they have a coach. And you can see that no matter how good the golfer is, all of these top-class golfers have coaches. Very few of the coaches have been winners on the tour.
Good point.
So there's that coaching evaluator role.
Yeah.
And then when they will see, they've seen how it's done. They may well get another example next week, for all I know. But this is just beautiful learning in my book. And well, you can see I'm a convert, but I don't think there's any need to convert any of the guests who came. I think they've converted themselves already. I'll be really, really surprised if they haven't gone away and said, oh, guys, we could use this speechcraft.
Well,
the other thing is the personal development you've had as an envisager. That's a big personal development for somebody to envisage something.
Imagineer. I like the word imagineer.
Pulling together a team, team building.
I think everybody is getting something from it, and I think that's a nice way to wrap up this week's talk show for talkers. And the three of us are looking forward to Wednesday morning. Don't count the days, make that day count.
Thank you, Ted. See
Thanks,
you all
Maura.
next week.
Yeah, please God. Thanks very much, Maura. Thanks, Paul. Paul is gone. Adios. Thanks, Maura. See you, Paul.
Well, I've stopped recording
Thanks,
now.
Ted. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Folks,
Lovely chatting
bye-bye.
with you, lads.
That was 30 minutes,
Cheerio.
that
Bye.
segment. 30 minutes.
That's great. We'll put that out as a Christmas bonus.
Every minute was gold dust.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. Lovely. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well
Bye.
done. We're all leaving with big smiles on our face. Thanks,
Okay.
Maura.
I've no idea what happened to me, but my audio was very low.
Well, Maura, sorry, before you wrap up, how
Yeah.
was it that you went into the wrong room yesterday?
I went into the room. Well, I don't know.
I can't understand because
I
when
went into
Paul,
the same
Paul
room
was
as we were last week.
no, because Paul was going out to walk his dog, right? And
Yeah.
Paul said to me at 10 o'clock, I'm signing in. Oh, and I was having trouble trying to get in myself. But Paul was a bit concerned about going for the dog, the walk with the dog. So I said, Paul, look, let you sign in and I'll sign in and I'll let you know if I got in. So I signed in and I was in. But when I got in, then you were there. Your name was there, Moira O'Brien. No, you were after signing in. But you didn't come on screen, but your name was there, Maura.
Yeah,
so I said, that's great. No,
because I
Maura
hadn't registered, Ted. I had
What?
not registered.
You hadn't registered?
No, because previously we didn't have to register.
Oh, I see. So did you have to register for
Yeah,
this week's
I
show?
had to register then to get in. No, we
Oh,
didn't.
sugar,
We
and
didn't
do we
have
have
to
to do
register.
that now again next week?
We didn't have to register the last 2 weeks.
Because
The first 2 weeks.
Antonia had the same problem as you. She was stuck in a room on her own.
Yeah, exactly. I
Must be
was
the same
there
thing,
all on my own. Nobody else there. But
And can you check that out to see if that's the case for next week as well?
Well,
because
no, because
the
now
link
I've-
that we had yesterday, Maura,
now
is
I've
recurring.
registered. Now I've registered, Ted.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it's a it's
Be okay,
a
so,
multi-meeting registration.
Yeah, tis a multi-meeting
Yeah.
for the
But
entirety of the
But why
program.
did
now.
why did Paul suddenly put registration in when it wasn't registration before?
Well, I'm not sure. You'll have to ask Paul that. No.
Well, I mean, it was fine to do it. I don't mind. It's just you needed to tell us.
Yeah, but is it a kind of an extra safeguard when you have to register?
Oh yeah,
But
it's
you-
fine.
so
It's
when you
fine,
s-
Ted.
but-
I'm not
Yeah,
complaining
but
about
as an apprentice, when you sign in and what is there, doesn't it tell you have to register?
No,
And
it
you get
didn't.
an email then saying this is the link to get in.
No, I didn't get an email when I registered. As
Doesn't
soon as I clicked OK, I got straight in. I didn't have to click
All right.
a link again, which I've never
And how
seen
is it
before.
that when you clicked OK the first time you didn't get straight in?
I got in, but I got into a meeting
Okay.
that I was all on my
All right,
own.
you're going to have to go there, so I have to love you and leave you.
Okay, well you've left
sugar.
me with a heck of a lot to
Yeah, and that's dodgy. Like you're the Zoom master, and
edit.
if you're not there, we could all be in trouble.
Yeah, well,